Let's begin at the root, because everything I'm going to share with you today will make so much more sense once you understand what is actually happening inside the body of someone with type 2 diabetes. Most people have been told one thing: your blood sugar is high because your pancreas isn't making enough insulin, and so they imagine a broken factory, a machine that's worn out and can no longer produce what it needs to produce. But here's the reality that often goes completely unspoken in a typical 15-minute doctor's appointment. Many people with type 2 diabetes produce insulin in completely normal amounts. Some produce more than a person without diabetes. The pancreas is not always a broken factory. The real problem is at the receiving end. The cells in your muscles, the cells in your liver, the cells in your fat tissue. They have stopped responding properly to insulin signal. Insulin is knocking on the door, but the door has gone partially deaf. Scientists call this insulin resistance, and it is a core engine driving type 2 diabetes for the vast majority of people who have it. Now, why does this matter for what you're about to learn? Because the foods you eat don't just raise or lower your blood sugar directly. They also send signals, chemical signals, that either make your cells more receptive to insulin or more resistant to it. And those signals begin the moment you take your first bite of breakfast. The breakfast you eat doesn't just affect the hour after you eat it. Research has shown it affects insulin sensitivity for the rest of the day. The morning meal sets the metabolic tone. So when we talk about eggs, we are not just talking about a low glycemic food. We are talking about a morning signal, a precise, powerful biological message that either works with your body's insulin system or against it. And when most people with diabetes hear, "eat eggs," they nod. They think, yes, okay, low carb, I've heard that. But they don't know the specific decisions that determine whether those eggs are actually working for them. Those decisions are what this video is about. Let me walk you through what eggs actually do in the body of someone managing type 2 diabetes, not in vague terms, but specifically and mechanically. 2 large eggs contain somewhere between 12 and 13 grams of complete, high-quality protein. Complete means it contains all 9 essential amino acids, the ones your body cannot manufacture on its own and must get from food. One of those amino acids is called leucine. Leucine is particularly important for people with diabetes because it has been shown to stimulate insulin secretion in a precise, proportionate way. Not the chaotic, overwhelmed spike that comes from a high-carb meal, but a calibrated, measured release. Now here's the part that surprises most people. Eggs have a glycemic index of essentially 0. By themselves, they do not raise your blood sugar, not a single point. But that 0 is conditional. It only stays at 0 when you make the right decisions around them. The moment you fry them in butter at high heat, the moment you stack them on white toast, the moment you pour a glass of orange juice alongside them, that protective power begins to erode. Not because the egg became something different, because what surrounds it changed everything. Protein, and eggs in particular, slows down what scientists call gastric emptying. That means food leaves your stomach more slowly, and glucose enters your bloodstream more gradually. Instead of a sudden flood of sugar hitting your blood all at once, you get a slow, controlled drip. The result? A much flatter blood sugar curve after your meal. Now, let me address the conversation I know some of you are having in your heads right now. Cholesterol. You were told, probably years ago, maybe by a doctor you trusted, that eggs are dangerous for your heart, that the cholesterol in egg yolks would raise your blood cholesterol and increase your cardiovascular risk. And if you have diabetes, which already raises heart disease risk, you took that advice seriously. You gave up eggs. You switched to oatmeal and fruit juice. You thought you were making the safe choice. Here is what current science actually tells us. For the overwhelming majority of people, including most people with type 2 diabetes, the cholesterol found in food, dietary cholesterol, has a minimal effect on the levels of cholesterol circulating in your blood. The substances that actually drive harmful LDL cholesterol are refined carbohydrates, added sugars, and trans fats, not eggs. Research published in a leading nutrition journal found that eating whole eggs actually improved something called cholesterol efflux capacity. That is your HDL cholesterol's ability to pull harmful cholesterol off your artery walls and carry it out of your body. Eggs were helping to clean the arteries that people believed eggs were damaging. And a 2025 randomized control trial found that when 2 eggs per day were eaten as part of a diet that was low in saturated fat, LDL cholesterol actually went down compared to a high saturated fat diet that didn't include eggs at all. The problem was never the egg. The problem was what the egg was being cooked in and what was being paired with. Think about that. The food you gave up may have been your ally this entire time. I want to tell you about a patient. I'll call her Mary, because her story captures everything we've been discussing in a way that numbers alone never could. Mary was 71 years old when she came to me. She had been managing type 2 diabetes for nearly 10 years. She was one of the most disciplined patients I have ever worked with, sharp, motivated, and deeply invested in doing everything correctly. But her A1C had been stuck at 8% for 2 years, and her fasting blood sugar in the mornings had not dropped below 158 in recent memory, despite her medications. When I asked her to describe a typical morning, she described it with genuine pride. She woke at 6:30, took her medication, and sat down to what she called her heart-healthy breakfast. Steel-cut oatmeal with a tablespoon of honey and half a cup of blueberries, a glass of cranberry juice purchased from a health food store because the label said no added sugar, and occasionally a small whole wheat muffin she had baked herself from a recipe she found online. She had done her homework. She had made choices that every surface-level health article would applaud. And I want to be very clear. Mary was not foolish. She was not careless. She was working with the information she had been given. I asked her to do one thing before our next appointment. I asked her to check her blood sugar with her glucometer at exactly 45 minutes after finishing breakfast, and again at 90 minutes, just to see. She came back the following week. She pulled out her log and slid it across the desk. At 45 minutes after breakfast, 214. At 90 minutes, 198. Every single morning. That heart-healthy breakfast was launching her blood sugar past 200 before 8 o'clock in the morning. Here's why. The steel-cut oatmeal, even the slow-cooked variety, was breaking down into glucose more quickly than it would have if paired with substantial protein. The tablespoon of honey was delivering pure, simple sugar with no buffer. The no added sugar cranberry juice still contained 24 grams of naturally occurring sugar per cup with zero fiber to slow anything down. And the whole wheat muffin, despite its wholesome name, was delivering another rapid carbohydrate load within minutes. Her pancreas was working overtime every morning before 8 a.m. and losing the battle. Here is what I propose. Not a complete dietary overhaul. Not a long list of foods to track. One foundational shift. Replace the oatmeal and juice with 2 eggs, cooked without oil, which I'll explain in detail shortly. Pair with half a ripe avocado and a generous portion of sautéed spinach or sliced tomatoes. That's it. Same medications, same exercise routine, same everything else. Just that one swap. 3 weeks later, Mary came back in. Before I even asked, she placed her glucometer log on the desk. Her 45-minute post-breakfast reading was now averaging 138. Her 90-minute reading was averaging 124. She looked at me and said something that I thought about many times since. Doctor, for the first time in years, I'm not afraid of my own breakfast. I used to dread checking my numbers because I always knew they were going to be high, and I never understood why when I was trying so hard. Now I check them and I actually feel proud. Over the following 4 months, her fasting blood sugar dropped to an average of 131. Her A1C came down to 7.3%. Her total cholesterol profile actually improved, and she told me she had more energy after breakfast now than she'd had in years, because she was no longer riding that blood sugar roller coaster up to 214 and then crashing hard by 10:30 in the morning, desperately looking for something to eat. The solution was in her refrigerator. It had been there the whole time. Let's get into the practical details, because knowing that eggs are beneficial is only step one. How you prepare them and what you pair them with determines whether you actually experience the benefit. Let's start with cooking method. The gold standard for blood sugar management is eggs cooked without added fat. I know this sounds strange to some people because we grew up associating eggs with butter sizzling in a pan. But here's the key insight. Egg yolks already contain their own fat. You don't need to add more. In a good nonstick pan over medium heat, 2 beaten eggs will cook into soft, creamy scrambled eggs in about 2 to 3 minutes with 0 oil added. The result is clean, simple, and completely free of the additional fat load that can temporarily worsen insulin sensitivity at the cellular level. Hard-boiled eggs are equally excellent, and in many ways more practical. Boil a batch of 6 on Sunday evening. They keep perfectly in the refrigerator for 5 to 7 days. In the morning, you peel 1 or 2, pair them with your vegetables and avocado, and your entire breakfast takes under 5 minutes. No excuses and no compromises. Poached eggs are another excellent option. They require a bit of practice. A splash of vinegar in gently simmering water helps the white hold its shape, but they contain no added fat and have a beautifully soft texture. What you want to avoid is frying eggs in butter or oil at high heat. Even if you use olive oil, which is genuinely a healthful food, the benefits of olive oil are greatest when it's consumed cold or at low temperatures. When heated to frying temperature, those benefits diminish and you've added a significant caloric and fat load that doesn't serve your goals. Save the olive oil for drizzling over vegetables or making salad dressing. Now, the yolk. Do not throw it away. I still encounter people who are discarding the yolk out of cholesterol fears that the science has not supported in years. The yolk is where the majority of the egg's nutritional value lives. The yolk contains choline, which your liver needs to process, and export fat. It contains vitamin D, which plays a direct role in insulin sensitivity. It contains lutein and zeaxanthin, antioxidants that protect your eyes, and people with diabetes face higher risks of diabetic retinopathy. It contains B vitamins essential for nerve function, and diabetic neuropathy is a very real concern for long-term diabetics. Eat the whole egg. The yolk is not your enemy. What you pair with your eggs may matter as much as the eggs themselves. This is where people either maximize their results or quietly undo all the work the protein was doing. Avocado is the single best companion for eggs in a diabetes-conscious breakfast. The monounsaturated fats in avocado, the same type of healthy fat found in olive oil, slow digestion, reduce the glycemic impact of anything else you're eating, and support cardiovascular health. Half a ripe avocado paired with 2 eggs is a combination that is genuinely filling, deeply nutritious, and powerfully stabilizing the blood sugar. Spinach deserves special attention. Spinach is one of the richest dietary sources of magnesium, and research has consistently shown that people with type 2 diabetes tend to have lower magnesium levels than those without it. Low magnesium is directly associated with poor insulin sensitivity. Adding spinach to your egg-based breakfast is one of the simplest and cheapest ways to address that deficiency. Tomatoes, bell peppers, mushrooms, and onions are all excellent additions. Low in carbohydrates, high in fiber and micronutrients, they increase the volume and nutritional value of your meal without pushing blood sugar up. Now, what to avoid pairing with your eggs? White bread and flour tortillas, sweet biscuits and pastry, hash browns, sugary ketchup, orange juice, apple juice, or any other fruit juice, even fresh squeezed. Processed breakfast meats like packaged sausage or high-sodium deli bacon. These pairings are so habitual, so culturally embedded in what we think of as breakfast, that most people don't experience them as choices. They feel like just what goes with eggs. But every one of those additions either spikes blood sugar directly or introduces saturated fat and sodium that works against your metabolic goals. If you want something carbohydrate-based alongside your eggs, choose a small piece of genuine whole grain bread, dense with visible seeds, and eat it after the eggs and vegetables, not before. The protein and fiber you've already consumed will buffer the carbohydrates' impact on your blood sugar. Now we arrive at the piece I promised you at the beginning, the piece that almost no one in the diabetes education space is talking about, and it has to do with what your body is doing the hours before you even open your eyes. There is a phenomenon called the dawn phenomenon, and if you monitor your blood sugar regularly, there's a real chance you've experienced it without knowing what to call it. Here's what happens. In the 2 to 3 hours before you wake up, your body begins releasing a wave of hormones, cortisol, glucagon, and growth hormone, as part of its natural process of preparing you to be alert, functional, and ready to move. One of the effects of these hormones is that your liver begins releasing stored glucose into your bloodstream. This happens before you've eaten a single thing. Your blood sugar begins rising while you are still asleep. For a person without diabetes, the body responds quietly by releasing a small pulse of insulin, and blood sugar stays in range. The whole process happens invisibly. For a person with type 2 diabetes, that liver glucose release can push fasting blood sugar significantly higher than it was at midnight. Some people check their blood sugar before bed, and it's 120, and then they wake up and it's 155 or higher, without having eaten anything during the night. That is the dawn phenomenon in action. Now here is the critical connection to your breakfast. What you eat in the morning either amplifies or dampens this cortisol glucose cycle for the rest of the day. A high-carbohydrate breakfast essentially adds a new wave of glucose on top of the one your liver already released. Your system gets hit twice. The result is that post-breakfast spike you keep seeing on your glucometer. A high-protein breakfast, eggs being the most accessible and practical example, sends a calming signal to your metabolic system. It feeds your muscles and your cells without triggering an additional insulin surge, and it helps dampen the inflammatory response that elevated cortisol promotes. The practical implication of this is something I tell every patient. Eat your eggs within 30 to 60 minutes of waking up. Do not wait 2 hours until you feel hungry. Do not skip breakfast and tell yourself you'll just drink black coffee. The dawn phenomenon is already running. Your cortisol window is already open. Give your body protein early, and your blood sugar curve for the rest of the day will be measurably, visibly flatter. This single piece of guidance, eat protein within the first hour of waking, has moved fasting blood sugar numbers in my patients without any other change. Let me tell you about another patient, I'll call him Robert, who taught me something important about the evening side of this equation. Robert was 66 years old, a retired school principal, disciplined and health conscious. He was already eating eggs for breakfast, but his fasting morning numbers were stubbornly sitting between 145 and 165 despite reasonable daytime control. When I looked at his full day of eating, the problem became clear. His dinners were consistently heavy in carbohydrates, rice, pasta, or bread-centered meals. And around 9 p.m., when he felt slightly hungry before bed, he'd have a small bowl of cereal. Here is what was happening. When you eat a large carbohydrate load in the evening, your liver has an abundance of glucose available overnight. And because of that abundance, when the dawn phenomenon hormones arrive in the early morning hours, the liver over-releases glucose. It has the fuel. It releases it liberally. But when you eat a protein-centered meal in the evening, particularly one anchored by eggs, your liver's overnight behavior changes. It has less glucose reserved to work with. The early morning release becomes more measured, more controlled. I asked Robert to try one modification. 3 nights per week, replace his usual carbohydrate-heavy dinner with a 2-egg omelet packed with vegetables, spinach, peppers, mushrooms, alongside a small green salad with olive oil and vinegar dressing. No bread, no rice, just eggs and vegetables. 3 nights per week, not every night. After 3 weeks, his average fasting blood sugar had dropped from 158 to 137. His primary care physician, at a follow-up appointment, looked at Robert's home glucose log and asked what medication he had changed. Robert told him, "I started eating eggs for dinner 3 nights a week." The doctor laughed with genuine surprise, because we are simply not trained to think of food as having that kind of specific, targeted, measurable effect on a particular metric like fasting blood sugar. But it does. And I want to add a very important note here. If you are on insulin therapy, changes to your evening diet, particularly increasing protein and reducing carbohydrates, can affect how your overnight insulin behaves. Before making significant dietary changes, please talk with your physician or endocrinologist. Tell them what you're considering. Ask whether any dose adjustments might be needed. That conversation is not optional. It is part of the strategy. Let me close with the 5 mistakes I see most consistently, because avoiding these alone will move your numbers. Mistake 1, cooking eggs in oil or butter. The egg has its own fat. Cook it dry in a non-stick pan, or boil it. Mistake 2, pairing eggs with refined carbohydrates. White toast, corn tortillas, biscuits, and hash browns undo the protein-stabilizing effect almost immediately. If you want something alongside your eggs, it goes after the eggs and vegetables, not before. Mistake 3, drinking juice with breakfast. Even natural, freshly squeezed juice delivers a concentrated glucose hit with no fiber. Eat the whole fruit. Don't drink it. Mistake 4, throwing away the yolk. The yolk is where the vitamin D, choline, magnesium, and B vitamins live. You need those nutrients specifically as someone managing diabetes. Eat the whole egg. Mistake 5, eating eggs too late in the morning. The dawn phenomenon is running in the first hour after you wake. Get protein into your system within 30 to 60 minutes of waking up, and you dampen that early cortisol glucose cycle for the rest of the day. Here is your plan for tomorrow morning. Wake up within 30 to 60 minutes. Prepare 2 eggs, scrambled without oil, or hard-boiled from the batch you made the night before. Pair them with half a ripe avocado and a generous portion of any non-starchy vegetable you enjoy. Spinach, tomatoes, bell peppers, or mushrooms. Drink water or unsweetened herbal tea. Eat the eggs and vegetables first. If you feel you need something starchy, let a small piece of dense whole grain bread come last. That is the whole plan. Nothing exotic. Nothing that requires a special store or a complicated recipe. And then, check your blood sugar at 45 minutes and 90 minutes after eating. Write it down. Come back here in a week and tell me in the comments what you saw. Because what Mary told me has stayed with me. She said, I feel like someone finally turned on a light in a room I've been trying to navigate in the dark for 10 years. That's what this is about. Not eggs. Information. Agency. The ability to look at a number on a glucometer and feel proud instead of defeated. Your body is not your enemy. It has been doing its absolute best with the signals it's been given. Give it better signals. Protein at the right time, paired with the right foods, and it responds, often faster than you'd ever expect. If this video gave you something useful today, one idea, one angle you hadn't considered, please give a like and share it with someone in your life who has struggled with their blood sugar and feeling like they've already tried everything. Sometimes all it takes is the right piece of information arriving at the right moment. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you in the next one.